Um, okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we last time left off at the discussion about their deception and their makr, right? Which they're reciprocating because of the initial deception given by say Nuh alayhi salam, right? And we talked about that last time. And then we kind of like read this passage, لا تذرون آلهتكم. So I want to read from here, فقالوا في مكرهم, and we can, which we've already read. And then I want to stop at قل سموهم. Can I get one volunteer, please?
السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. سحر كيفك؟
الحمد لله تمام. I can do it. بسم الله.
Okay. Yeah,
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فقالوا في مكرهم لا تذرن آلهتكم ولا تذرن ودا ولا سواعا ولا يغوث ويعوق ونسرا. نوح 23. فإنهم إذا تركوهم جهلوا من الحق على قدر ما تركوا من هؤلاء. فإن الحق في كل معبود وجها يعرفه من عرفه ويجهله من جهله في المحمدين. وقضى ربك ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه. سورة الإسراء 23. أي حكم فالعالم يعلم من عبد وفي أي صورة ظهر حتى عبد، وأن التفريق والكثرة كالأعضاء في الصورة المحسوسة وكالقوى المعنوية في الصورة الروحانية. فما عبد غير الله في كل معبود، فالأدنى من تخيل فيه الألوهية، فلولا هذا التخيل ما عبد الحجر ولا غيره، ولهذا قال قل سموهم.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sahar. You know what, Ravina, can you read for us the English, if you don't mind? So we'll quickly go through the English. You can start from in their deception, if you're okay with that, by the way. In their deception, and you can stop at worship. So it's just 2 paragraphs.
Wait, have you shared it? Because I was looking for mine. Where should I start?
In their deception,
Yes,
and stop at the end of the 2nd paragraph where it says God who is worshipped.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In their deception, they say, do not abandon your gods, neither Wad, Suwa, Yaghouth, nor Ya'uq, nor Nasr. If they had abandoned them, they would have become ignorant of the reality to the extent that they deserted them, for in every object of worship there is a reflection of the reality, whether it be recognized or not. In the case of Muhammad's heirs, he says, your Lord has decreed that you serve only him, meaning he has determined it. The one who knows who is worshipped and in what form he is manifest to be worshipped. He also knows that the distinction and multiplicity of forms are merely like parts of a sensible form or the powers of a spiritual image. Indeed, in every object of worship, it is in truth God who is worshipped.
And then the Arabic continues, the ignorant man imagines the object to be invested with divinity, and were it not for such a notion, neither the stone nor anything similar would be an object of worship. For this reason, he says, so Rasul, he says, and it's mentioned in the Quran, bid them name them, let them name them. So let's go back to the Arabic. Yeah, so do you remember, like we mentioned last time, that throughout the surah you'll always find these 2 verses paired up together. One is a verse that's Nuhi from Surah Nuh, and there'll be a second verse that is a Muhammadi verse. And he always does that to show you that there is a perspective and a verse that the people of Nuh would have responded to. Like, had that verse been revealed to them, they would have responded to the Risala of Nuh alayhi salam, or they definitely would have responded to the Risala of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so there is a similarity, there is an affinity between these two verses, and you'll see that as we go throughout the fuss. It's not always a perfect affinity, but then he shows you what's missing. So when he says, or when the chiefs, the kubara, the akabir, the tribe, the chiefs of the tribe says, don't abandon your gods and don't abandon Wad or Suwa or Yahud or Ya'uq or Nasra. The Sheikh Al-Akbar says that's similar. It's not identical. That's similar to وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَا تَعْبُدُ إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ, which means your Lord has decreed that you worship no one but Him, which means hakama, which means He made it that way. He made it such that no matter what you're worshiping, anything you worship, it's always God forever and ever, whether you know it or not. And so that's the unconscious reason why they worship the multiplicity of their deities, because there is a divine face in each and every one of them. So this actually, so it's because of this, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has a face in each thing that is worshipped, that there's a passage I came across when I was translating, and I'm in the middle of translating the Kitab al-Ajwib. It's a fascinating passage. He says, this is why the Arif Billah, he rejects nothing that comes to him from Allah, but he just weighs it in the scales of the Sharia, what's called the Mizan al-Sharia. So he sees how to respond to that thing. So whatever comes to him from Allah. Now, he says that in the Kitab al-Ajwib, with regard to your suluk, he says that there are 4 kinds of forms that can present themselves to you whilst you are alive. So there are the forms of the dunya. Then there's the forms of the devils, right? The shayateen. And then there's the forms of yourself, but kind of like your ego, your nafs. So there are the nafsani forms. And there's probably like a 4th, but I can't remember right now. So maybe so he does something really interesting. He mentions 2 kinds of suluk. And he says in one kind of suluk, they just ignore these forms. And that's kind of like the suluk of zuhad, the zuhada, and the ubad, right? The suluk of the people who only want to reach what's called a sa'ada al-zahiriya, the outward happiness, outward felicity, which means salvation, right? They stay away from anything that could tempt them from leaving obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and anything that could lead them to forgetting about Allah. So they stay away from the forms of the dunya, the forms of the nafs, and the forms of the devils. And they reject them all. To summarize it like in a very reductive way. But then the Shaykh Al-Akbar says there's the same kind of saluk, and that's the saluk he does, right? He says, because the first kind of saluk, yeah, you'll get salvation, but you'll never become a Shaykh Tarbiyah from it, ever. Like you won't be an Arif Kamil from that kind of Tarbiyah, from that kind of saluk. From that kind of spiritual wayfaring, you are not going to become a master one bit. But he says the second kind is you recognize that all these forms, whatever you're looking at, are sort of, what's the right way to say it? They're all God's forms, but they are more specifically the sur for His asma, for His divine names. So then the Arif Billah, he doesn't reject them. He sees how to respond to them. What is the appropriate way to respond to them? So with, for example, the surah shayateen, right? The forms of the devils and the Satans, he knows how to reject their call when they call him to disobedience, right? But he witnesses the divine presence in them without denying that. And then he responds appropriately to each form so that nothing is missing, nothing is left out of his suluk, and he is always in a state of perpetual shuhud, witnessing the divine wherever he is. That's the perfect arif. That's the arif al-kamil. Even his egoic self, the nafs, which is despised in a very kind of ascetic kind of a Sufism, in the Sufism of the Zuhada, right? Of the Zahid. there is a nobility and sharaf to the nafs, and especially the dunya. And I might have mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again anyways, because Rasul Sallallahu he mentioned something. So there's a hadith that mentions something to the effect where the dunya is complaining to Allah, saying, my sons, my children curse me, right? And so Ibn Arabi says it's ironic that there are certain kinds of worshippers who curse the dunya because the dunya is perceived as being someone who is bad, right? If you think of the dunya as a woman, right? Like this is a woman who's trying to lead you astray. He says actually the dunya is like our mother, and it's like you cursing your own mother because it's through the dunya that you reach the akhirah. So how can it be bad? And Allah made it. It's one of the forms of Allah. So how can it be bad? So don't take it that way. But there's a certain way you approach the dunya so that the dunya doesn't mislead you completely. If you're in ghafla, it's your ghafla of the dunya that misleads you. But it's not the dunya itself that's bad, right? So that's why there's an intrinsic goodness to everything, including all these forms. Even like the satanic forms, they are causes of your eternal happiness when you know how to approach them and you know what they're doing for you. But if you are heedless, if you're in ghafla, then they mislead you and lead you to damnation and shaqawa. Yes, Irvina.
So since we are talking about dunya, how do we define it in this case? And what would be the difference between the earth, alam, and dunya?
The alam, so you can also translate it as the earth, the world, the cosmos. The alam is just the place where all this happens. So al-alam is actually kullu ma siwa Allah. So it doesn't have to include the dunya. The alam can include the akhirah as well. That's kullu ma siwa Allah. It's whatever is other than Allah. Anything. So for example, even including Jannah wa nar, paradise, the garden, and the fire, that's other than Allah. But that's included in the alam. So the alam is just the totality of space that is other than Allah. In order to just describe the way, to describe to you the way the cosmos works. So alam is cosmos. Dunya is the cosmos with respect to just this world, not the next world. That's it. So it is your engagement with with what's called the umur, the affairs of this world, like going to work and having a job and getting married and having children and earning a livelihood and anything to do with this world that's not strictly related to religion, that's dunya. So that's the distinction.
Thank you.
If that makes sense. I'm thinking there's a few comments in the chat. Yeah, okay. So these are the forms. So Allah Ta'ala has a face in each thing, which is why Arif never rejects it. Now, we got up to this sentence because we read this passage last time. So he says, فَالْأَدْنَى, the lowest kind of, I guess, idol worshiper, or the lowest kind of person who perceives God's face. So the lowest kind, someone who has an inkling of spirituality. مَنْ تَخَيَّلَ, he is someone who imagines, right? He imagines that with regard to God's divinity, his uluhiyya, right, that it inheres in the idol, right? So he thinks that the God's divinity, it's an intrinsic part of the idol. So it's something he's imagining, right? He can perceive divinity within the idol, so he thinks it belongs to the idol. So imagination is an extremely important part of what it means to be human, because if it wasn't for this imagination, no one would worship a rock or anything else beside it. So this is why Allah Ta'ala says, "Qul samuhum." So He commands Rasulullah to tell the idolaters, name them, because even though the highest of the high, so that's the Arif Billah, the highest spiritual master and the lowest, most ignorant idol worshiper both perceive divinity, but not in the same way. And that's why they say different things. So in a sense, they both know that what they're witnessing is divinity, but how? How is that divinity present in the object of worship you are looking at? The lowest idolater, he doesn't know how, so he's guessing. And his imagination is what assists him in guessing. So that's why we have this verse in the Quran, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he tells them, name them, because you don't know what you're talking about. Name them, right? Because if they had named them, lasamuhum, they would have named them a rock, a tree, or a planet, right? Hajaran, shajaran, wa kawkaban, right? Because then that begs the question: if you gave this idol a name, so why are you calling this idol, let's say Wad and Suwa, but you're also calling it rock and tree? How did you get from a rock to Wad and Suwa? How did you make that connection, right? They won't be able to tell you how. Like, I don't know. Well, exactly. You don't know. That's what makes you ignorant. And that's what's being pointed out here. I want someone to finish off this passage, please. So we will read from Qul Samuhum and we'll stop at Tabi'ah, if you can see it here. If I can get, yes, Znira, please. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل لسموهم حجرا وشجرا وكوكبا ولو قيل لهم من عبدتم لقالوا إلها ما كانوا يقولون الله ولا الإله والأعلى ما تخيل بل قال هذا مجلا إلهي ينبغي تعظيمه فلا يقتصر فالأدنى صاحب التخيل يقول ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى والأعلى العالم يقول إنما إلهكم إله واحد فله أسلموا حيث ظهر وبشر المخبتين الذين خبت نار طبيعتهم فقالوا إلها ولم يقولوا طبيعة فقد أضلوا كثيرا أي حيروهم.
Yeah, so we'll stop at طبيعة because this goes on to the next section. Thank you so much, Zanira. So, okay. Then, Ravina, can you read the English, please? So you can see the English, right? So start from the ignorant man, and then it goes on to the next page, and we'll stop at nature, something passive.
Okay. So now, the ignorant man imagines the object to be invested with divinity, and were it not for such a notion, neither the stone nor anything similar would be an object of worship. For this reason, he says, bid them name them. Had they done so, they would have called them stones, tree, or stars. Had they been asked whom they worshipped, they would have said a god, and not God or the God. The man endowed with knowledge does not imagine thus, but knows that the object of worship is the vehicle of divine manifestation, worthy of reverence, while not restricting himself to that particular object. The ignorant man says, we only worship them, that they might bring us nearer to God. The man of knowledge says, your God is only one, so submit yourselves to him, whosoever he is manifest, and bring glad tidings to those who conceal, that is, who conceal the fire of their lowly nature. They would say a God and not a nature, something passive.
Okay, so this is a very interesting passage as well. قُلْ سَمُوهُمْ, so name them, and if they name them, they name them a rock, tree, or a planet, or a star. وَلَوْ قِيلَ لَهُمْ, right? And then if you say to them, who do you worship them? مَنْ عَبَدْتُمْ لَقَالُوا إِلَهًا, they would say, a God. مَا كَانُوا يَقُولُونَ اللَّهِ, because if they actually understood the way reality works, they would have named the original source, the ultimate source of that thing they consider to be a god. They wouldn't call it a god. They called it a god because they don't perceive the tawheed between the different things they call deities. If they could perceive the tawheed, the unity between them, they would just say Allah, the actual source. Al-ilah, the God. Not ilahan, the God, Allah. Right? ما كان يقولون الله ولا الإله. Right? والأعلى ما تخيل. So the highest one doesn't imagine. The only reason you imagine something is when there is a gap in your knowledge. When there's a gap in your knowledge, you're unable to ascertain the reality of that thing. So the Shaykh al-Akbar is obviously contrasting the knowers from the non-knowers. And so at this stage of the story, the people of Nuh, Qawm Nuh, are non-knowers. They're ignorant. They know that there's divinity in their idols, but they don't know how. And they don't know how to ascertain the link in the right way. So they are ignorant. So the highest one says, he doesn't imagine that there's divinity. No, he knows there's divinity, but in what way? So he says, هذا مجد إلهي. This is a locus of divine disclosure. This is a locus of divine disclosure, meaning this is a mahal. In Arabic, it's called a mahal. This is the locus from which God's divinity or his name emerges and reveals itself, right? So God, Allah Ta'ala, does not literally reside in the idol physically. No. And there's no divinity residing in the actual idol itself. No. You could even say that there's a spirit, but not a divinity. No. So قال هذا مجلا إلهي. Actually, that's wrong. هذا مجلا إلهي. هذا مجلا إلهي. So there's a mistake here. ينبغي تعظيمه. And it is necessary. It is necessary to revere it. تعظيم. You do تعظيم of it, right? And this goes back to a verse in the Quran. ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإن or فتلك, I think فتلك من تقوى القلوب, right? فإنها or something like that. فإنها or فتلك من تقوى القلوب, right? So تعظيم is a word that's in the Quran. فلا يقتصر. And he knows that because this is a majla, so you are looking at the place from which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is revealing one of his names to you. That's worthy of reverence. That's worthy of doing something called inqiyad al-qalb. Your heart, kind of like, not that your heart bows down to the object of worship, but that your heart recognizes the mightiness that's in that locus of divine disclosure. And so you do ta'lim of it within the heart. And then also فَلَا يَقْتَصِرْ, but you also don't limit yourself to that one perception, to that one witnessing, to that one shuhud. No, you know that it's in others, it's in other places of manifestation and revelation too. So this is the highest. He is the true Arif Kamil. And why is that? Because he brings together tanzih and tashbih. Whoever brings together tanzih with tashbih and brings them together as Quran, right? Jama'ah, he brings these two qualities together, he is a master of the path. And the person who only sticks to seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any object where there is tashbih, then he's missing something. He is inferior. And the person who only wishes to perceive Allah and can only see him in tanzih, and in any locus where there's tanzih, he's also not a knower, he's ignorant, right? فالأدنى صاحب التخيل, right? يقول, and so the lowest spiritual person, who is the person who uses his imagination and depends upon, so صاحب التخيل, he depends upon his imagination, he relies upon his imagination. يقول, he says, ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربون إلى الله زلفى. So he doesn't even know why he's worshiping them, but he knows one thing. He knows that he worships them just that they can bring him near to Allah, because in pre-modern mythologies, they would perceive these idols, and this is understood by Fakhruddin Razi, for example, and Sheikh Al-Akbar as well. So this is understood by the Islamic scholars, that the idols were worshipped because they were perceived to be kind of like the favored chosen ones of Allah, and so they would bring the worshiper nearer to Allah, which is why in mythologies you have the children of God, sons and daughters, which we don't accept. And so those are the ones who will bring you near to Allah. That's why we worship them. This is what the lowest worshiper is saying. وَالْعَالَى, so the highest one, he's an alam, he's a knower. He knows the reality and how reality works. يقول إنما إلهكم. So the God that you're worshiping, right? إنما, he is only one God. What that means is two things. It means that what you're worshiping is ultimately Allah, right? Right? But also, quite literally, the deity that you are worshiping, this deity is real, but it's actually Allah. It's just the locus of manifestation for one of Allah's names, but it's actually Him. And this deity you're worshiping, it's wahid. It's not two, it's one. إنما إلهكم إله واحد فله أسلموا. So then you should submit yourselves to Him, to God. حيث ظهر. So submit yourselves to God from wherever He appears, from whichever object of worship He appears. أسلموا. And so you again have these two verses. And so this is the Muhammadan verse. إنما إلهكم إله واحد فله أسلموا, right? And the idolatrous verse is وَمَا نَعْبُدُهُمْ إِلَّا لِيُقَرِّبُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ زُلْفَى. So you should know that what your deity is real, but it's actually God. It's not a partner of God. It's not other than God. It's God Himself. وَبَشِّرِ الْمُخْبِتِينَ. So the mukhbitin, right? الَّذِينَ خَبَطْ نَارُ طَبِيعَتِهِمْ. So the word khabita, it's related to the idea that there is an ember of fire, but it's not ignited. It's just kind of like it's just like red. So it's a very gentle flame. It's a very gentle fire. So the mukhbitin are a category of awliya as well. So these are the ones who have subdued the fires of their natures, طبيعتهم, right? So that they are purely light. They are purely nurani. So the verse says, give glad tidings to the mukhbitin. Give glad tidings to these mukhbitin, the ones who have subdued the fires of their nature, because al-tabi'a, nature, is a veil over the spiritual world. So these individuals, these awliya, they become luminous, they become light when they have subdued the fires of their natures, which is what? Their shahawat, which is their passions, passion for food and passion for love, for example, right? When they subdue those passions, then the verse says, so give them glad tidings. الذين خبط نار طبيعتهم. So when they do it, فقالوا, they say a God. ولم يقولوا, they do not say a طبيعة. So they then perceive the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind any object of nature, so that they stop saying, oh, this is a tree, this is a rock. They only say Allah, this is Allah. So they're very similar to the idolaters that you were seeing beforehand, right? But the difference between them is one of knowledge, it's ilm. That's what separates them. What separates them is their ilm. The ones who have subdued the fires of their nature, and they can perceive, they have direct witnessing, and they see Allah behind every single thing. They know it's Him. So you can call it ilahan. Ilahan here doesn't mean a god other than God. It means tajalli, a tajalli of Allah. Because in the vocabulary of Shaykh al-Akbar, tajalli and ilahan are synonymous. But the idolater, he says ilahan, but he means a god besides God, which is wrong. And that's why he's not a knower. Is this based on the idea that they had the knowledge of Allah through revelation first? It could be, Sidi Salman, it could be. It doesn't have to be. Or how about the concept of innate knowledge or desire of a God? Sure, yeah. Like there is this fitra that we have, right, that then gets corrupted. So that's why, because we're all born with the fitra, everyone has an inkling of divinity, whether they know it or not. And then Mircea Eliade, he says that Homo sapien, he's homo religious. Like his intrinsic nature is to be religious. He can't not be religious, or she can't not be religious. But the one who has an inkling is different to the one who actually knows reality, because that knower is a muhaqqaq. He or she is a verifier who has verified the way reality works. So the difference between them is night and day. Irvina.
So I hope that I can make the question clear. When someone has the realization that the idol is actually a manifestation of Allah, but does not know how to act properly towards that manifestation, how can he or she submit to that kind of manifestation? Let's say not idols, let's put aside my idols, but let's say that we have Pharaoh, and
Yes.
we know that he is a manifestation of Allah, but he is a tyrant.
Yes.
And how does the submission come into this equation? Like, okay, I say, yes, I know that you are a manifestation of God, but I don't know really how to, oh yeah, you have answered this question before, Sharia now. But,
Exactly. Yes.
But in
Yes.
time of no, yeah, I got it. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's a very important question. In the time of Nuh alayhi salam, he brings his own sharia, but his
I
own sharia
always get
what?
this question somehow.
Yeah, like you keep coming back to these things in circles, right?
Yeah.
Because that's part of the journey, subhanAllah. Yeah, his sharia excludes the idols. That's the issue. Even though in reality they are manifestations of Allah, but his sharia excludes them. And this is where the conflict lies. Whereas the Sharia of Muhammad does not exclude 100%, but it includes them as madahir of Allah, right? But if you say partner, no, that's wrong. Any questions so far? And if not, then we'll continue reading. Right. So because the people of Nuh, called Nuh, so I mentioned before, this whole fuss is actually a story. And it's following the story that's being played out in Surah Nuh, right? Because Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, I said this before, what is he to his people? He is there, not just prophet, he's also there.
Murshid.
They're murshid, right? Exactly, thank you so much. Zanira, right? Yeah. Sorry, because I can't see who the names are. But yeah, thank you so much. So he is their murshid. Because they don't know Allah and they don't know the realities and they don't know what they're worshiping or how they're worshiping those idols. So it's his job to guide them to real knowledge, to actual self-actualization and verification. If this word sounds strange to you, please let me know and I'll explain it. But it's the most important word you have in the madhab of Shaykh al-Akbar. It says, when you obtain real, direct knowledge of the realities, so you taste them for yourself. They have no tasting of God. They have these tiniest of glimpses and glimmers. That's all they have. That's the best that they can have. So as a murshid, he's going to guide them to real knowledge. And so the journey is continuing, right? Can we read some, or I guess, yeah, if there's a volunteer, otherwise I'll read, but from وَقَدْ ضَلُّوا كَثِيرًا, and then we will stop at I guess the sentence عليهم قاموا. Yeah, thank you, Zanira. Go ahead.
From وقد أضلوا, right?
Yes, please. Thank you.
وقد أضلوا كثيرا، أي حيروهم في عداد الواحد كالوجوه والنسب، ولا تزد الظالمين لأنفسهم المصطفين الذين أورثوا الكتاب أول الثلاثة فقدمه على المقتصد والسابق إلا ضلالا إلا حيرة. المحمدي زدني فيك
تحيرا.
زدني فيك تحيرا، كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا.
Thank you so much. Maybe we went a bit fast there because there's a lot happening, even though it's just 3 or 4 sentences. Here's the English version if you want to do it. So he also says, and then you stop at, I guess, doer of good works, if I'm not mistaken.
Stop in perplexity. They stop in this complexity, right?
Yeah, right. So we stop in
56, but not 56.
When it's, yeah, sorry, there it is. Thank you so much. Exactly. At footnote 56. Exactly.
56. Okay, yeah. He also says, they have caused confusion to many, meaning that they have caused them to become perplexed in the face of the apparent multiplicity of the One in respect of his aspects and attributions. It only increases the oppressors in confusion, meaning those who oppress themselves by self-denial, who inherit the book of unitary knowledge. These are the first of the 3 categories described by God elsewhere, since he places the self-oppressor before the moderate one and the doer of good works. In confusion, that is, in spiritually self-effacing perplexity on the part of the heirs of Muhammad, who said, "My Lord, increase my perplexity concerning you." When it, so the self-revelation of the One, shines for them, they proceed, but when it shines not, because of the multiplicity of forms, they stop in perplexity.
Right. That is
confusing as well.
That is confusing, and it's very appropriate that it be confusing, because this is Bab al-Hira. This is a chapter of confusion, which is what it's supposed to be. He's continuing the story. Go ahead. Yes.
What's the reference for زدني فيك تحيرا?
This is not a hadith sahih. It's not sahih. But then, so what this means is that, but this is like a khabar that is widely accepted by the Sufis. It's well known, it's accepted, and they would have known that it is sahih through kashaf, but it is not sahih through transmission. So وَقَدْ ضَلُّوا كَثِيرًا. So now he's continuing the story from Surah Nuh, and so they have misled a many, which is part of their makr, the deception that they're talking about earlier on. وَقَدْ ضَلُّوا can mean one of 2 references. It can mean the chiefs of the people of Nuh, Qawm Nuh, the tribal leaders, or it can mean the idols. One of the 2 is fine. It can either be the idols or the chiefs. So they have misled many. And so one of the meanings of dalal in Sufi terminology is hayra, which is perplexity, which is confusion. What is hayra in the teachings of the great masters? Hayra is the highest station. It is the highest maqam. It is the maqam that is sought by the greatest of the awliya. But there's two kinds of confusion, two kinds of hayra. One is the hayra of the non-spiritual people who do not have spiritual realization. This hayra is dangerous, and it's not the one sought by the masters. It's not the one sought by the masters. By the way, sorry, how do we say self-actualization in Arabic? So this is tahqiq, Sidi, tahqiq. So this is tahqiq. Okay. So أي حيروهم في تعداد الواحد كالوجوه. So they confuse them by the multiplication of the one through his faces. So it's as if you're multiplying God a number of times, who is the one, by multiplying his faces, right? So then if you do that through the multiplication of what? The idols. If you increase the number of idols, then that confuses the masses, because the question then is, where should you turn to? Which idol should you turn to? Which divine face should you turn to? That leads to disaster. That leads one astray. And the good kind of confusion that is sought by the greatest masters, the correct kind of hayra, the correct kind of confusion that is sought, is perplexity in the divine names. Because when they finish their spiritual path and they reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so this is wusul, when they reach the divine presence, the journey then is min al-khalq ila Allah. That's the first journey. Then the second journey is min Allah fillah. The second journey is you are journeying from God within God. How do you journey within God? Within his names. And so the spiritual traveler who's a master, when he arrives at the divine presence, he thinks, this is it. This is the end of my journey. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he lifts the veil and he sees, no, there's something more beyond that. And he does that for all eternity, continuously lifting the veil. So that leads to confusion. Where should he stop? He cannot stop, because we are travelers forever and ever. So that's the kind of hayra, the good kind that they seek. So he says, أي حيروهم في تعداد الوعد كالوجوه والنسب, and the divine relationships, because the divine names are relationships, and each one is different to the other. If you make them all equal to one another, that creates confusion, because that will not enable you to know which one should you turn to, right? So now, Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, he's actually going to make his first dua against them, his first imprecation against them. This is the first one. وَلَا تَزِدِ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا ضَلَالًا. Do not increase them, because they have misled many. Do not increase them except in further misguidance. In the same way, because by the way, this goes back to the verse that ties the whole fuss together. If you mock us, then we should mock you back, just as you mock us, right? And so just as they ran further away from his message, he is praying against them that they are turned further away through misguidance, right? Ataf, yes.
This is particularly interesting, and I always wondered when I read this in ayah and other ayahs, basically, for some prophets, they were in a position where they could decide basically whether they want to pray against their people or to pray for them. And I know, for example, like Prophet Muhammad, he prays for his people, like for them to follow the path and to believe in God. But specifically in Nuh story, he prays, yes, he prays against them. And that really got me to wonder why.
I'll tell you why.
Why isn't the other way around?
This is an excellent question, because the prophets have their own personalities, Ataf. That's the simplest answer. Each one has their own personality.
Yeah.
And so all the prophets are perfect. They're all perfect. And the most perfect of the perfect is Rasulullah, which means there's still differences between them. So what they say is that there are prophets who incline more towards the attributes of majesty, jalal. And there are prophets who incline more towards God's beauty, his jamal. So Sayyid Nuh or Musa, alayhum as-salam, they incline towards Allah's jalal. So they manifested the attributes of majesty and compulsion and qahariya, because that is their personality. And because of what they faced from their people. Then you have prophets like Muhammad and Isa alayhi salam. They have actually, so let's say for example, say Isa alayhi salam, he inclines towards beauty, right? And the beautiful divine attributes and names, like Al-Latif, for example, Al-Ghafur, Al-Rahim. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's the same, but it's more accurate to say that he's Kamil. So you've got Jalal, Jamal, and Kamal. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's Kamil. And he brings them together. So what you will see is that the prophets Nuh and Musa alayhim salam, they exercise great patience. But you can also see that there are points in their stories where they begin to lose their patience. So why is this? Shaykh al-Akbar, Sayyid Shaykh al-Akbar, he says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had the state, the hal of a Khalifa. The Khalifa is someone who manifests all the attributes. So sometimes he prays against them, and sometimes he prays for them. Sometimes he says, leave me. And other times he says, oh my Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. So sometimes he's like this, sometimes he's like that. That's the hal of the Khalifa. Because the divine attribute is وَكُلُّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. كُلُّ يَوْمٍ هُوَ فِي شَأْنٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the one who is taking care of everything, every single moment, not just day, every single moment of existence. So that means there's a diversity of moments. Each one's different. So you have to react differently to each moment, which is different. There are other beings who are not like that. Their internal hal is fixed. It doesn't change with the situation. So the internal hal of Rasulullah changes with the situation. He flows like water. He flows with the situation. The angels are not like that. They don't flow. The angels have this great patience, and they are halim, and they have this hilm. So they wait and 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 they wait some more. But once you pass a certain point, that is it. That's it. You're done. They will pray against you, and nothing you do can save you. You're done. That's a different state. That kind of state is scary, because once they're angry with you, you're doomed. No matter what you say, it's done. You are damned. Sayyid Nuh alayhi salam, he had the state of the angels, and there's a reason for that too. So his internal hal was the hal of an angel.
Yeah, I mean it's very important, because I could imagine, like with the prophets basically and messengers, they do have the merits and they have, of course, absolutely much better quality than human, but they are human at the end.
Yes, they are. Although to be fair to Sayyid Nuh alayhi salam, he called on his people for at least 300 years. He lived for 900, and he called on them for at least 300 years, if you go by the Jewish scriptures. So he called on them for hundreds of years. That's no joke. That's not little. So he waited a really long time. But when the point of no return comes, that is it. You're done. That's it. Nothing you say.
Yeah. And there is something, maybe the other way to think about it is like the brutality of the act of Qawm Nuh maybe
Yes.
one of the reasons that he reached a point where he prays against them, because even if it's maybe it's not longer time, but the fi'l itself, or the action, what they did was so big and huge, made it hard for him to be softer.
Yeah, but also the things that the people of each prophet did was huge. It's hard to say that they didn't do huge things, but they have different personalities. They have different traits and attributes. So it's something that, although yes, what he faced was mighty and great. There's no question about that, alayhi salam. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And yes, their sins were great. That's exactly true. Yes. Yes. Irvina, go ahead.
All this conversation reminds me of a saying by Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi,
Yes.
who says basically that if you cannot be a Muhammadan, then be like Isa alayhi salam.
Yes.
So
yes.
even in this case, like I think that the prophets are rahma for the world and for us human beings, and I can just like think about Palestinians right now. They are in incredible state in a way, and it's very hard. It's very hard to achieve the maqam of Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, where he didn't curse the others when they oppressed him. You know, when you are oppressed, it's very hard. So it feels that when people see the prophets losing or losing their what's that called, sabr, patience in a way.
Patience.
And when they see themselves as well losing the patience, at least they can say, yes, but even the prophets lost the patience at some point. So they don't feel bad about the situation they are in sometimes.
I mean, we do have to speak about the prophets with like correct adab. They don't really lose patience. It's something else. Although, I mean, I understand why we're saying that, but it's more like they receive permission from Allah to do something like imprecate against them, right? But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no blame on the people suffering anyways, because that's a whole other story, subhanAllah, you know. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm not pretty sure I got the idea quite clear, so I don't want really to but people, they do have a right, even in, I mean, Rasul, actually, Sayyidina Muhammad, in his fight against Kuffar in Mecca, actually, he used simply his right and people's right to fight the oppression and to seek faith and to continue that journey. And that journey is not easy. Absolutely, it's when you're going through a fight and you want to prove your right and to take your right, you're gonna go through so much of difficulties and pain and patience, and this is the path Allah and the Prophet. I would say, make it clear for people who are fighting for their rights and for themselves.
Yeah, very true. I have nothing against that at all. Yeah, Zanira, go ahead.
So I was just looking up just like the ayats, and I don't think Nuh al-Islam specifically like asks God to punish them. In fact, Nuh al-Islam says, قال ربي انصرني بما كذبون, because they call him possessed. They say he's possessed. Just let him be and watch what happens to him after a while. And then in another place in Surah Nuh, I think he says, ربي أني مغلوب. No, sorry, I forgot the reference to that one, but he says, ربي أني مغلوب فانتصر. That so he asks for help. So this is what they say. قالوا يا نوح قد جادلتنا فاكثرت جدالنا فأتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين. They said, no, oh Noah, you have argued with us far too much. So bring upon us what you threaten us with, if you are of the truthful. قال إنما يأتيكم به الله إن شاء وما أنتم بمعجزين. He responded, it is Allah who can bring it upon you if He wills, and then you will have no escape. ولا ينفعكم نصحي إن أردت أن أنصح لكم إن كان الله يريد أن يغويكم هو ربكم وإليه ترجعون. My advice will not benefit you, no matter how hard I try. If Allah wills for you to go astray, and He's your Lord, and to Him will you be returned. And then it says that Allah said to him that, but then it says, Allah said, وَأُوحِيَ إِلَى نُوحٍ أَنَّهُ لَن يُؤْمِنَ مِنْ قَوْمِكَ إِلَّا مَنْ قَدْ آمَنَ فَلَا تَبْتَئِسْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. And then it was revealed to Noah, none of your people will believe except those who already have. So do not be distressed by what they have been doing. And then Allah tells him later, don't question me about those who are those who are zalimeen. إِنَّهُمْ مُغْرَقُونَ. They're drowned. So it's I don't think he actually, considering the amount of stuff that they put him through, just even time-wise, he didn't actually say that, but they were begging for it. They were like, yeah, bring it on. So,
No, but he does pray against them in Surah Nuh in 3 places. So he imprecates against them in 3 places in Surah Nuh. Although notwithstanding that.
Is that not what's it called? Okay, yeah. La tazid al-zalimin.
There's 3 places he imprecates against them in Surah Nuh. And obviously what you said as well is correct. Thank you, Aisha and Aitaf. See you guys. So we'll try to wrap this up. So let me answer some questions here because we started a bit late. And I agree with you, Asma. Yes, it's much better adab to say, rather than lacking patience, I think prophets are imbued with discernment and judgment for when to pull back from a certain path and action. I agree with that. But there is also a personality factor involved, but in a way that's appropriate to them without projecting our own deficiencies onto them as well. Like what I mentioned about the state of the angels and the state of the Khalifa, for example. But that's absolutely true. Isn't his dua against them also the logical conclusion of his focus on Furqan and also part of his role as Murshid? That's exactly it, Hannah. Yeah, that's exactly it. This is definitely the logical conclusion of Furqan, absolutely. And this is part of his role as Murshid, which he's doing unconscientiously. When we read the verses of punishment, it's purification. So it's part of Jamal. It's Jalal, but it's ultimately Jamal. That means everything Allah Subhanahu does is ultimately Jamal, because it's all for us anyways, in an ultimate sense. But more immediately, no, it's Jalal. It seems like the Prophet ﷺ never prayed against people, but did against individuals. Feels like the perfect manifestation of Sharia and role of Khalifa. Yeah, he did both. I don't know, but his prayers against certain individuals or people was extremely rare. You're right. So at one point, when he sent a delegation of, I think, 70 Qur'an and Hafaz, memorizers of the Quran, to the Mushrikeen, he sent them to the Mushrikeen so that they could be taught Quran. They assassinated and slaughtered all those Sahaba who memorized the Quran, and so he was deeply angered, and so during the Fajr prayer in Qunut, he wanted to pray against them. So he was about to, but then he received an ayah from Allah, and that's the exact verse he received, which is, "Don't pray against them, because we have sent you not except as a mercy to all the worlds." So that's what stopped him from praying against them. But he wanted to in that moment. But yes, he's definitely the perfect manifestation of Sharia in his role as Khalifa, exactly. MashaAllah. And he's the perfect Khalifa, actually. He responds to each situation differently with what it needs and requires. He's not fixed in a state. He flows with each state and each situation. And I don't know what I would say about Hadrat Dawood and Sulaiman alayhim salam. Did they have both? They're more like Jalali. Even though every prophet has a mixture of Jamal and Jalal. Every prophet.
That's what I originally thought, but I wondered when it came to like Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam's vocal ability, like the fact that he could sing beautifully. And then I thought about the Prophet Dawood and about judgment as well, by using judgment. And I thought about how like the beautiful aspect played very subtly. So even though on the outset there's a lot of aspects, especially for Hazrat Suleiman, that play out in terms of power and quwwat, and how that plays out in terms of having reign over things. But there's a lot of subtlety in terms of the fact that he's got dominion over the animals and over nature and of that kind of thing. That's what I was thinking as well. So although the power is dominant, I thought the beauty was also apparent. So I wondered whether that was a balance between the father and son as well, in terms of with Hazrat Daud. But then again, Hazrat Daud also has had the David and Goliath kind of like Goliath, sorry, the physical battles as well. So I wondered how he was measured, because I know Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam has beauty that is given to him. So I was wondering whether there's certain prophets in where it's more measured, like Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and maybe Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then I wondered about the father and son duo as well, and whether it made any difference.
You're right. And in each prophet it's different. But you could probably like determine an overall balance of Jalal or Jamal with respect to each prophet. But yeah, I think I agree with you. MashaAllah. Guys, I'm gonna wrap it up here, inshallah. I mean, I really wanted to explain this passage. It's incredible, but it's also packed, so we don't have time for that. So in 2 weeks' time, inshallah, we'll get back into it. And see you all, inshallah. I'm just gonna stop the recording here.